Hello sewers, so we are going to look at a demonstration of how to apply a shape facing. So we know that we have three facings that are commonly found in garments, and the shape facing is one of them. Do you remember the other two? As you think about the other two, we're going to start to talk about our shape facing. Okay, so we know that the shape facing is a separate pattern piece from the main garment shape, and it's the same shape as the area it's going to cover and knit in. So very similar to the sample you saw in the previous video, we're going to apply a shape facing at the neckline of this sample. Okay, now notice I didn't assemble like my side seam at the garment. Usually a facing around the neck is easier to assemble if the garment is not constructed all of the way. It's much easier, so I can open the garment up and manipulate it easily around my neck edge. Okay, so to start applying the facing, you have to first construct the facing. So the first step requires you to stay stitch the notched edge, so the edge that will be going to the which will be sewn to your garment edge. So I had to apply a row of stay stitching around my notched edge. Now I applied a notch in a peculiar way. Usually I don't do this, but it just was a little easier to do it for this instance. Usually my notches are cut out in the triangular shape, but I have a cut in this time. It'll serve the same purpose. Just note to self. Alright, changing my machine back to the original setting. 1 second. Okay, ready to go now. Alright, so we stay stitched the facing. We assembled the facing at the shoulder seam. That's this step here, okay? I press the seam open, and then I neatened the outer edge of the facing. These are the same steps in your text, okay? And I applied a zigzag finish to my edge. So now we're ready to assemble the facing to the garment. Do we remember what Staystitching is for? Okay, now I have a curved edge here. So why that's important, I'm going to be manipulating this edge a lot as I assemble my facing. Okay, so stay stitching, it prevents areas that are cut on bias from stretching out of shape. Okay, so that's going to help me to keep this shape the same shape as my garment neck edge shape. I don't want it to get stretched out bigger than it's supposed to be. It's going to affect my process. Okay, now I'm going to attach the facing to the garment. So we're going to pin the facing right side to right side. Now I have this white fabric on the wrong side. This is interfacing. So this is the next topic we will be exploring. So this gives my facing more structure, more shape, and it's always on the wrong side of the garment. You never see interfacing on the right side of the garment. When you're trying to match up a garment, you have to match major seams. So I'm matching my shoulder seams exactly. Pin based. Notch to notch. Every 2 inches or so, I'm going to apply a pin, just so my garment stays stabilized. And when you're done, you shouldn't see the stay stitch on the right side. If you're seeing it, then you did it technically incorrectly. Okay, stay stitching happens 1/8 inside your seam allowance. So you should know where 1/8 is, and you should know where your seam allowance is. So you shouldn't be seeing it and the garment is done. If you're seeing it, as I said, you did it wrong. Just be mindful of that. It's not going to affect your garment to the point where you have to take the whole garment apart, but it just is something you want to avoid doing to not waste time trying to take out messy stitching. So let's apply the facing. Notice I'm sewing my seam allowances open. I'm moving my fabric to get around beautiful neck curve. Keep checking. I always check to make sure I'm sewing on 2 layers and not one. Back stitch. Good. Now we still have another machine sewing step to do, so we're going to leave the machine where it is. But we know that the next step, we have to trim and grade our seam allowances, okay? I'm going to just trim. I'm going to cut it down to about half. This makes the area of my neckline look a little more attractive, less bulky. Definitely these 3 layers of stitching at the shoulder seam, you want to trim that down. Now grading is a little different. So when you trim your seam allowances at different lengths. So how I would grade, if I chose to grade, I would trim the seam allowance closest to my facing. I would trim that shorter than the outer seam allowance. Okay, it'll look nicer that way. Then any curved areas, you're gonna clip. This type of curve, it's better if you notch. That means you cut little triangles out to help the curve fall more attractively. Okay, I'll do it once here just for the sake of time. So I want the video to be very short. I don't want it to be a long video. Okay, so we have some fabric cut out. This is notching. Now the next step is to press, but I'm not ready to press yet. I want to apply understitching. We saw that in the other video that's important because it helps your facing to stay on the wrong side of the garment and not be visible. Okay, so to do that, I'm going to finger press. I want my seam allowance to be on my facing side. Understitching is not effective if you do not sew your seam allowance down. Okay, so I'm going to ensure that my seam allowance is to the right of the seam line. That's where my facing is. And I'm going to understitch 1/8 away. Let's investigate. For this stitching, I would backstitch. I wouldn't backstitch for stay stitching because that's done on 1 layer of fabric. But understitching, it is a stitch that is used to keep an area secure and do a particular job. So I'm gonna do a backstitch. So I keep checking to make sure that I am sewing on my seam allowance. Oops, it's moving to the wrong side. Keep checking. Easy for it to do its own thing. You have to make sure you control your fabric. Sometimes students think the machine does all the work. Machines don't have brains. You do. You have only one brain. Okay, so understitching has been applied. Neaten your work. Move this a little to the side. Okay. So you have to always cut twice. So I prepare myself to cut twice. Cutting once, you have messy work. So I have understitching on the facing side. So, whoa, almost had a little mistake there. You can imagine the contraption I have holding this camera up. It's very interesting. So now we're going to press. Now when you press, you intentionally roll your facing to the wrong side. So you have to do that as you press. You can see it's so much easier to manipulate this garment because I didn't assemble my side seam. This is the wrong side of the garment. I do not see my interfacing. It's being hidden from me. Okay. This is the right side. I don't see my understitching. because I pressed it to hide away. So that's going to help my facing to stay beautiful and attractive. The last thing I would do is I would tack the facing down so this wouldn't happen. I don't want to see it. I don't want to see it. So what I prefer to do, I think it's the easiest method, but some students don't agree, is to stitch in the ditch. So I have a seam here. I'm going to pin base my facing in position. Then I'm going to apply a short row stitching in my seam line. Now, if you have brown thread, it's going to be invisible. So this is why I prefer it. It's faster than hand sewing. Hand sewing gives some students security, but sometimes you have to do a machine stitch just for the sake of time because you are training for an exam. Okay? So there you have it, a shape facing.